have got a member of the Labour Party all ready to talk to us this morning about, of all things, upgrading poorly insulated homes. Now, it might be a bit warmer now, but we all know how important that insulation is, and certainly was over the winter when it was very cold and we didn't want to spend money on our heating bills.
Well, the Labour Party are accusing the Tories of a disastrous record on heating homes. Keir Starmer's party vowed to upgrade every one of the 19 million homes below a band B and C over the course of a decade. Well, joining us now is the Shadow Financial Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray. Good morning to you, Mr Murray. Really good to have you with us on the programme this morning. So tell us more about Labour's Warm Homes plan, supposedly going to cut energy bills for £500 for millions of families. Where's this money going to come from?
Yeah, no, it's a really important plan to set out, and thanks for the opportunity to do so, because, we know the cost of living crisis hasn't gone away, and it's really important that people have had immediate help through the cost of living crisis. We were pushing the government to extend the energy price freeze beyond April, which they did in the budget, but actually what we need as well is investment in the long run to make sure we bring down energy bills permanently. And if you look at our housing in the UK, we have some of the draftiest housing in Europe. We really need to bring down our energy bills by insulating in homes. There are 19 million homes across the country that would benefit from that investment in insulation. That would bring down their energy bills permanently by, as you said, an average of around £500 per family at current prices. Now, if you look at the Conservatives' record on this, 10 years ago in 2013, the coalition government slashed the insulation programmes. Insulation dropped off a cliff, and we've really lost that decade where we could have been insulating homes. What we're saying to the government is now get on with it, get insulating those homes. If they'd done it when we first called for it in September 2021, there would already be 2 million more homes with insulation that they need. But now is the time for them to get on with it, invest for the long run, and bring energy bills down permanently.
Well, look, everyone's thinking about the pennies at the moment, as we know, and that is leading to, as we've seen, all this strike action that's been going on. The junior doctors still on strike. We're now hearing that it at least looks possible that the recommended deal that was struck with the government, the RCN recommended to its members, could be rejected. We're expecting to get that result through later on today. You've already said this morning that the government needs to stop the strikes. Well, that's all well and good. But in terms of a material plan, how would the Labour Party do it?
Well, the difference between the Labour Party and the Conservatives is that we understand the importance of negotiation. And we've been saying this throughout the industrial disputes which have been happening in different parts of the public sector, different parts of the economy over many, many months. We've been saying the government needs to play its role in making sure those negotiations happen, putting their shoulder to the wheel, rolling up their sleeves, getting around the table, trying to find a deal, because ultimately no one wants strikes to go ahead. The employees who are on strike don't want to go on strike. The people who are affected, in the case of NHS nurses and doctors, patients, they don't want the strikes to go ahead either. And the government needs to play its role in negotiating to find a solution to avoid industrial action going ahead.
Yeah, but hold on a minute. Certainly, let's look at the nurses. They have negotiated and they reached a deal with the RCN. The RCN said, we're going to recommend this to our members. So the government has negotiated. So under those circumstances, the ones we're in today, what would the Labour Party do if it was in government?
Well, look, let's see what the result is later today in terms of the offer made to nurses. But, the Labour Party position has been absolutely consistent throughout the industrial disputes in different parts of the economy in different sectors over many, many months, which is that negotiation is the way to avoid strikes going ahead. And negotiation isn't a one-off event. You don't just have one negotiation and things go away. You need to make sure that you're engaging with employee representatives to try and find those deals, because ultimately strikes going ahead, that's a failure to negotiate. That's a failure to find a solution, and it impacts people across the board.
Yeah, I just wonder if you could put a bit more meat on the bones for us, because it's one thing to say negotiate. Negotiations have been going on. I mean, there might be, I know there's issues with the junior doctors and what have you, but there have been negotiations, there have been talks, and what we're seeing is, unless you're putting more money on the table, the unions are often not happy. Now it seems the nurses themselves, the members of the union, are not happy. So under those circumstances, what do you do? I mean, would the Labour Party simply put more money on the table?
Well, look, it's not for me to come up with a negotiating strategy here live on air. The point about negotiation is that the government, employee representatives, any relevant other parties should sit down and have those discussions and negotiate to try and find a solution. You know, I think it's the principle of negotiation, it's the importance of finding a solution, it's the importance of avoiding industrial action going ahead, which we have been setting out for many, many months. And the government, you know, it feels like the government hasn't really learnt anything from what's been going on over many months. When you look at the junior doctor dispute and the government's failure to negotiate with them. You know, negotiations are about compromise. When you have the employee representatives setting out what their initial starting point is, I think people know they're not likely to get that. There is going to have to be compromise. That's the necessity of negotiation is to make sure a compromise happens. But having that compromise, having that deal, is what is so critical about avoiding industrial action going ahead.
Mr. Murray, you're here this morning to talk about a plan that's aiming to save hundreds of pounds for millions of families here in the UK. But there's several papers have picked up on a story this morning about Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer actually wasting public money. This was when he was Director of Public Prosecutions. He was billing £160,000 for a chauffeur-driven car. That's despite him living just 4 miles away from the HQ at the time, plus tens of thousands of pounds on first or business class flights, and his successors' travel bills were less than a third of the size of Sir Keir Starmer's. The Express newspaper says that Sir Keir Starmer was treating taxpayers with contempt and wasting money. So how can the public trust the Labour Party and Sir Keir Starmer with public money now?
Well, look, the reason why the public can trust us with public money is because we have been setting out clearly for the last 2 or 3 years that we would make sure that every penny of public money is spent wisely. You know, this government has wasted so much money. Look at all of the COVID fraud that happened during the schemes under Rishi Sunak when he was Chancellor. All of that money lost, all of that money written off, you know, dossiers of waste and fraud which we're aware of. You know, we would make sure that public money is spent wisely because we really recognise the importance of public money being spent on people's priorities. You know, every single pledge that we have made, every single promise that we have made in opposition is fully costed and fully funded, so people can have confidence in us that we know how we would raise the money to pay for pledges we make and that we would spend public money wisely.
So you want to use public money wisely and people would applaud that. So answer me this. Is £160,000 spent on a chauffeur when you live just a couple of miles from the office, is that using public money wisely? Yes or no?
Well, look, I haven't seen that story. I don't know the details of that story. But like what I'm setting out is our promises as an opposition. What we would do in government.
Forgive me, but as a hypothetical, then is that a good use of public money? Well,
I'm not going to comment on hypotheticals. I haven't seen that story. The point I'm making is about what our pledges are as an opposition, what we would do in government, the offer that we're making to people, what we're saying we would do if we were in office. And we set out very clearly our fiscal rules about how we would manage the economy. We set out how every pledge that we make is fully costed and fully funded. And we set out how we would cut down on the waste and fraud which has been endemic in this government.
Yeah, but do you understand? I mean, forgive me, but do you understand how some people watching and listening may think, well, look, if you're not even prepared to... I mean, these are official figures. If you're not even prepared to say, right, and this was a lot of years ago now, but if you can't even turn around and say, yeah, actually, that was a mistake, that shouldn't have happened, we apologise for that, or Keir should apologise for that, I mean, that would at least garner some respect from people who are sceptical of the Labour Party, wouldn't it?
Well, look, I've not seen that story, as I've said, but what I am able to say is our plans that we set out really clearly about how we would spend public money and how we would cut down on the fraud and waste which has become so widespread in this government. And I think what people are looking for in the Labour Party is an alternative to this government, an alternative to a government who's presided over a decade or more of low economic growth, a government who has got used to wasting public money, and a government who is not offering solutions to the challenges we face. And that is the offer which we're making to the British people.
Mr Murray, we haven't got long with you. I wanted to put a new poll to you, though. This is in the newspaper this morning. It says the Labour lead over the Tories is shrinking. You've been at 40% over the past few weeks, but it's halved in the past week or so. What do you think that's down to? Do you think it could be down to the attack ads that have been used by Labour in the past week or so? One claiming Rishi Sunak does not think child sex abusers should go to prison. I mean, it's a pretty nasty look, isn't it?
Well, look, I don't follow opinion polls one day to the next. I don't think we should determine our politics by what one opinion poll says, because actually what we know is that even if an opinion poll is good for Labour, we should not be complacent. We can't take anything for granted. We need to keep working to earn people's trust, whether that's going out, knocking on doors, talking to people directly, or coming on channels like this to talk to people on the media or indeed in Parliament about what we're setting out. So, whatever opinion polls say, none of us are complacent. None of us take anything for granted. All of us in the Labour Party understand the importance of keep earning people's trust to make sure that they understand what we're offering and have the trust in us to form a government.
It's a final point. You say you want to come on to channels like this, and we are grateful that you have, to effectively talk to voters. I mean, it's why you come on. You want to talk to voters. You want to get your message across to voters. What do you think voters are going to make of this? Of what you've said today?
So, well, that's up for voters to decide. And I communicate with voters when I come on your channel. We also obviously set out our plans in Parliament. Tomorrow I'm going to Swindon to help some of my colleagues there to knock on doors and talk to voters directly. So, we spend our time talking to voters, trying to earn people's trust. Politics is a complicated business. The election is a long way away. There's lots of things that could change, lots of discussions we're going to have. But what it comes down to is setting out our plans and trying to earn people's trust.
James Murray, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let us know what you make of what James Murray was saying there about any of the topics that we raised with him. Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk.